This is a revision video for elasticity of demand. Many students find this concept confusing, so I'll try to make things easier for you. We are going to discuss the concept here as well as the few important graphs, what concept you need to apply when making a graph so that it becomes easier for you to draw the graph in the exam. You don't get confused between different types of elasticity of demand. So let's start. First, we have theory of demand. In theory of demand, we understand what is the direction of change. That if the price of a commodity goes up, the quantity goes down. So we are looking at if price of a pen goes up, it leads to quantity demanded for the pen going down, or if price of pen goes down, quantity demanded goes up. This was the concept of theory of demand. Elasticity of demand measures by how much this change happens. We are looking at the most important question here we are trying to understand is that by how much less or how much more the quantity demanded will change as a result of change in any of the factors affecting demand. So basically we are trying to understand the responsiveness of change in quantity demanded to its price or any other factor like your income or price of related goods. Now the definition for elasticity of demand is that it refers to the percentage change in demand for a commodity with respect to percentage change in any factors affecting demand for that commodity. You have three types: price elasticity of demand, where we are going to look at that how much change in quantity demanded happens due to change in price. Cross elasticity of demand is when we are looking at price of related goods. So you have complements, substitutes. When we are looking at that how much change in the price of a related good will affect the demand for the good in question, then we are talking about cross elasticity of demand. And income elasticity of demand is when we are trying to understand the change in quantity demanded due to the percentage change in the income of the consumer. So we bring the concept of a concept here we discuss about more about is normal goods and inferior goods. So these are few concepts which you need to know from your theory of demand chapter before you do elasticity of demand. Now let's first start with the definition of price elasticity of demand. It means the responsiveness of demand for a commodity. Now this is a key word. Responsiveness of demand for a commodity with reference to change in the price of the same commodity, of such commodity. For example, by how much the quantity demanded will go up if the price of the same product goes down. It depends upon the type of product. It could be a good which has low elasticity relatively, which means inelastic demand. Now, what do you mean by inelastic demand or elastic demand? Let's first discuss that and then we are going to go further. So when we are talking about elastic demand and inelastic demand, I have taken these two graphs. Now, what do you notice about these two graphs? If I want to show elastic demand, first of all, what is elastic demand? Elastic demand is the responsiveness or the change in quantity demanded or the percentage change in quantity demanded where it is responding much higher than the percentage change in the price of that commodity. For example, if we take Pepsi. Now, if the price of Pepsi goes up, people do have substitutes available. They can definitely look at Coke cheaper as compared to Pepsi if the price of Pepsi goes up. So it means if the price of Pepsi goes up, the demand of Pepsi is likely to fall more percentage wise as compared to probably another product which does not have a substitute. For example, petrol. Now in case of petrol, what happens? Even if the price of petrol goes up, the responsiveness of change in the demand for petrol is not that much. People will not stop buying petrol because they don't have easy substitutes available. So now if I want to show this in the form of a graph, The best way to do it, that when you are drawing graphs for these type of concepts, you need to keep certain things in mind. Please note that I have labeled the axis, price and quantity. And now if you observe the two graphs, the demand curve on the left hand side is flatter. This is steeper. Now what it will help me to do? Now I want to show that if the price of this good changes, the response of demand, I want to show it, the teacher should be able to look at it and make out that this is, the response is more here and the response is less here. To show your concept carefully, you need to keep in mind these things when you are drawing graphs for the exam. So suppose we have, let's say, original price is this for both, okay, and so my quantity demanded, original quantity for this graph would be this, and for this graph would be this. Yes, so let's mark it as P0, this also P0, this is Q0, this is Q0. Now if the price changes, so let's say the price of both the commodities go down. Okay, so let's say the price of both the commodities have gone down by the same amount. So now the new change is P1, P1. But look at the effect in quantity demanded. Here the change is much more pronounced in the first graph than in the second graph. In the second graph, the change in quantity demanded is very less. So isn't this what we want to show? So 1 second, I'll just label them properly. So this is your new quantity demanded when prices come down. This is your new quantity demanded when prices come down in the case of petrol. So let's summarize this concept of elastic or inelastic demand. What we are trying to understand here is that if price of two goods fall by, let's say, 10%, say good X and Y, and their respective demand increases by 20% in case of good X and 5% in case of good Y, then it means that good X has elastic demand and good Y has relatively inelastic demand. And this is what we are trying to show with these two diagrams. That let's say this is good X, where if 10% decrease has caused around 20% increase or 15% increase. So here the response of demand is much higher percentage wise than compared to the change in percentage of price. But in the second case, let's say if the fall is 10%, the change in the quantity demanded is lesser than 10%. So it could be, let's say, 5%. Then it's a case of inelastic demand. So I hope this concept of elastic versus inelastic is clear. And also you need to keep in mind that when you are drawing these two diagrams, when you are drawing any concept related to these two, you need to just keep one important point. That is, for the elastic demand curve, you need to draw a flatter demand curve. Automatically, you will get this effect of change in quantity demanded is going to be more as compared to change in price. And in case you want to show inelastic demand, relatively inelastic demand curve, you just keep the demand curve to be steeper like this. You will be able to show that very easily. Now let's discuss what is elasticity coefficient. If you notice in our graphs, in case of elastic goods, what we are trying to say that a decrease of 10% in price is going to lead to more than 10% increase in quantity demanded. And in case of inelastic goods, decrease of 10% price is going to lead to less than 10% change in quantity demanded. Now, how I can show this? There is a formula. The formula is that you can calculate elasticity of demand as percentage change in demand for, let's say, good X divided by percentage change in price of good X, of the same good we are talking about. Yes, and it is usually represented by minus sign because we are showing the inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded. Now, when we are looking at elasticity coefficient, so in case of elastic goods, what it would be? Something which is higher than, so quantity change in quantity demanded is higher. So let's say if it is 50% and 10% decrease has caused 50% increase in quantity demanded, you will always get answer greater than 1. And if in elastic goods, it would be like in case of petrol, the change, the responsiveness would be, let's say, 5% as compared to 10% change in the price. The answer would be always less than 1. So this greater than 1 and less than 1 are coefficient, elasticity coefficients. So we have, these are cases of relatively elastic goods, relatively inelastic good. Now you will come across 5 types of elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. So relatively elastic means when elasticity coefficient is greater than 1. This is elasticity coefficient equal to 1. You will, sorry, my mistake. This is less than 1. So this is less than 1. You have 3 in addition to this. Third one is unitary elastic, which would be equal to 1. You will have perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic. We will derive these 2 and then I'm going to come back here. So first of all, what is unitary elastic? Unitary means that the percentage change in the quantity demanded is equal to the percentage change in price. So if I have 50% change in quantity demanded divided by 50% change in price, this will be 1. So the same percentage change is happening in the quantity demanded as price. Now this is the graph for unitary elastic demand curve. If you notice, this has a special curve. This curve is also known as rectangular hyperbola. Now what is special about this? The reason we draw this curve as rectangular hyperbola is because we want to show that the total area at all points will be the same. So if there is a change in 50% here, there will be a change in 50% here. So we want to show that equal. So the speciality about this rectangular hyperbola is that it's a curve under which the total area at all points will be same. So in this figure, if you look at OPLQ area would be equal to area of OP1 RQ1. So we use this curve to show elasticity coefficient as equal to 1. Always remember that we are using math graphs to relate to the concepts we want to express in economics. Okay, so conceptual theories we want to express using mathematical notations or graphs. So that is the reason we try to use the curves which will make more sense to explain those theories. Now, if you look at examples, probably in case of durable goods like your scooter, refrigerator, you will find that they have unitary elastic demand curve. Now let's discuss the fourth case where we are going to learn about perfectly elastic demand curve. Now in case of perfectly elastic demand curve, you have a horizontal demand curve. Horizontal demand curve is showing us that if firm cannot change the price at all. Even if little bit they change the price, the whole demand can shift to another product. So these are actually subjective concepts, but still we can apply them to the real world in few situations. So here what is happening, that your percentage change in quantity demanded is, let's say, 50%, and the price changes almost 0%, then the answer would be infinity. The elasticity coefficient would be infinite in this case. And in case of perfectly, this is your fifth case where you have perfectly inelastic demand curve. Now in this case, what happens? Even if the price changes, price increases from P to P1, the demand does not change at all. So let's say in the case of insulin or any type of medicine which has no close substitutes, we have only one type of medicine available and people's lives depend on it. So in that case, what would happen? Even if the price of that medicine goes up, the demand remains unchanged. So it means the percentage change in quantity demanded is 0% here, and your prices, even though changing by 60%, still the elasticity of demand coefficient would be 0. So we come back to this table. Let's fill this table now so that you are able to look at all the coefficients together. So perfectly elastic would be is equal to infinity, and perfectly inelastic would be 0. And I hope now you have understood the reason for why it is like that. That for perfectly elastic, y it is infinite, and for perfectly inelastic, y it is 0. Now just let's do a final recap. All of these will make more sense to you if you take a look at them side by side. So what you are looking at is 5 different demand curves, which are starting from being perfectly inelastic to perfectly elastic, and the elasticity coefficient is varying from 0 to infinity. If you find this video useful, kindly like, follow and subscribe to my channel, where you can find more videos on various topics. You can also visit my website for blogs related to relevant topics. Hope to see you soon. Bye.